Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We letting folks in from the chat. We'll go over a few housekeeping things, and we're eager to get started and talk about supporting our multilingual learners. I know one of the first questions we'll get in the chat is, are we sharing slides and will we share them after? Yes and yes. As we share out the recording, we will also share the slides that are referenced today. We're very thankful for folks joining from all over the country. So if you want to drop in where you are joining us from, we'd love to hear it. And we're eager to get started as well as field your questions. So you should be able to access the Q&A feature in the chat, and we will take those questions as we go. As a reminder, this is kind of a two-part webinar. So we will get started with sharing with my friends at RAND about their new study and about some of the data, and then go into a reflection panel with some of our practitioners. And my name is Hillary Knutson. I'm Vice President Whiteboard, and I have the joy of leading the National Math Improvement Project. I'm going to be joined by Sabrina Lee and Dr. Ashley Wu from RAND, and then I will hand it over to Dr. Dia Bryant to introduce our panelists to talk about the data and their work within their context in supporting MLLs. A little background on the National Math Improvement Project. We are a community of practice of 6 of the largest districts in the country focused on improving mathematics. We are in year 3, and you can see our districts here and represented today, as well as our other partners across the country. We are relentlessly focused on supporting all students in both their core and supplemental instruction, and ensuring educators, both teachers and leaders, have the pedagogical and content knowledge to support math instruction and building math mindsets, not only in our students, but also for our teachers. And today we're really excited to think about this uniquely focused within support for multilingual learners. I'm going to have Sabrina join me, and you should be able to see her as well. Good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning, Hillary. It's good to see you.
I know, morning for me on the West Coast, evening for others, or afternoon already for others. Thank you so much. We are so thrilled to be able to highlight this report. As you know, we've talked about, multilingual learners, one of the fastest growing student groups in the country, and in particular in the largest districts that we work with as well. We're gonna share some report highlights, but wanted to just at the top say, as we think about multilingual learners, we have new NAEP results that came out on Tuesday. We know that both as we think about students in different student groups, multilingual learners continue to score less than their English only peers. And so I think it's critically important that we further interrogate how we are supporting teachers in this way. And this is some really exciting work that you all have done, that even if the results might be sobering, it allows us to think about how we improve. So I know we're going to dive right into the data, but anything that you want to share at the top, just generally about the report, and I know we have a few slides about the survey and such, but would love also if you want to share more about your role at RAND, as I just glossed over that too.
That's totally fine. Yeah, I'm Sabrina. I'm an assistant policy researcher at RAND and a doctoral student at the RAND School of Public Policy. And I'm happy to be here to share some background on sort of how we collected our data from the AEP and talk about our findings from the report, and also specifically hone in on math teachers. So earlier, we released a report examining how prepared K-12 public school teachers are to teach multilingual learners, or MLLs. And we know that MLLs are a fast-growing but underserved population where a lot struggle on assessments. And so we're excited to sort of share how we collected our data. RAND has a set of American educator panels, which includes nationally representative panels of teachers, principals, and school district leaders. And for the data that we're presenting today, we draw specifically on the teacher and principal panels.
Wonderful. Yes. So I think when we talk about there's a lot of different work that's happening. I think most folks are familiar with the surveys that you all do because there's so much great data that comes out about this. And we're being hyper specific about one segment of it, correct?
Yes, exactly. So the data that we'll be discussing today comes specifically from one of our national representative teacher and principal surveys called the American Instructional Resource Survey, or the AIRS. And so it's a survey that asks educators about their instructional materials and factors that support their use. We fielded the AIRS in spring of 2024 to a nationally representative sample of about 9,000 K-12 public school teachers, which includes about 3,000 math teachers, most of whom teach MLLs. We also draw on data from about 1,500 K-12 public school principals, about 1,300 of whom also serve MLLs. And since we're interested in covering MLL supports, we only focus on educators who serve some proportion of MLLs, sometimes comparing math teachers to teachers of other subjects and exploring the different responses of different types of math teachers. And we wanted to sort of prime you to know that we'll cover topics like how prepared math teachers feel about teaching MLLs, to what extent principals and math teachers prioritize professional learning, instructional materials, and instructional activities that support MLLs, and their teachers' perceptions of curriculum materials and whether those materials are adequate for supporting MLLs.
Yes. So we're going to look at the big picture and then we're going to talk some specifics with our practitioners as well. I think so MLLs, I think for some is also a newer acronym, right? We've made a move from ELLs and ELs to MLLs. And so we also just wanted to acknowledge that we're going to continue to use the MLL language as defined for elementary and secondary students and acknowledge just the significance of the population of students and how that it is certainly not a monolith. And even within districts, as they think about supporting their students, it is it continues to look wide. So we also just wanted to reference that, but we are eager to get into the data. Like I said, we will be sharing slides. We'll post these as we post the recording of the webinar. But Sabrina, I would love to just talk through the survey and get started on, as you mentioned, how prepared do teachers feel to support the students that are identified in MLL? And again, we're going to look at this through the lens of math. The report itself, which we've dropped in the chat, looks at other subjects as well. But we want to get in the weeds on math because that's our favorite topic.
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted to dive in and focus in specifically on math teachers. So, but just to backpedal a little bit, we asked all teachers how prepared they felt about teaching MLLs and found that about half of all teachers reported feeling moderately or fully prepared, and the other half of teachers felt not at all or only somewhat prepared to teach MLLs. And so next, we were curious about what teacher responses would look like for each subject area and found that math teachers looked similar to other teachers. In fact, they look more prepared compared to science teachers. And so since half of math teachers reported feeling moderately or fully prepared, and so we looked at the other half that felt not at all or only somewhat prepared to teach MLLs. We were curious about what types of math teachers felt prepared to teach MLLs, so we looked at that next.
Yeah, and I think that is also interesting, right? Because we are talking about a survey that is getting at teachers' sentiments as well. And so I think the nuance here of what is being surveyed, but also how you are kind of splitting it. And so I'm excited to get through the various charts here because I think it is helpful to look at how we consider different teacher groups in this and how districts are considering things like the implications for their professional learning and the resources that they provide to teachers because certainly just like our students, not every teacher looks the same or feels the same, and yet there are some conclusions we can draw, right, about the similarities amongst these groups.
Yeah, exactly. These might be subject to how teachers feel in the moment when they're taking the survey. But here we really focus on math teachers serving MLLs and their different grade levels and also their credentialing, we found that secondary math teachers were less likely to feel prepared to teach MLLs than elementary math teachers. So if you look at the left side, with the teachers who felt not at all prepared, 16% of secondary math teachers reported not feeling at all prepared compared to the 11% of elementary math teachers. And on the right side, only 42% of secondary math teachers reported feeling moderately or fully prepared compared to the 57% of elementary math teachers. So we see that elementary math teachers, may have more knowledge or access to sort of feeling prepared to teach the MLLs. We also found differences between math teachers with and without an ESL bilingual credential. And so math teachers with the credential were far less likely to report feeling not at all prepared to teach MLLs and far more likely to report feeling moderately or fully prepared to teach MLLs. And we also wanted to note that it's relatively uncommon for teachers to have an ESL or bilingual credential. In fact, only 19% of all teachers have such a credential, and it's even less common among math teachers at about 15%, compared to 24% of ELA teachers. And then finally, we looked at different proportions of MLLs that math teachers serve and found the more MLLs that math teachers serve, the more likely they felt prepared to teach them, understandably, especially when you look at the teachers who felt fully prepared to teach MLLs in the dark blue. Way more teachers who serve a large proportion of MLLs felt fully prepared to teach them compared to teachers who serve only a small or moderate proportion of MLLs. And we also want to caveat that there are very few teachers who serve a large proportion, only 6% or so in the bottom bar, and that almost half of the math teachers serve a small proportion of MLLs in the top bar. And so we find this a little concerning because it means that there are many teachers who have few MLLs in their classes and don't feel prepared at all to teach them.
Right. So. This is one that you and I talked about at length because I think it's really interesting to say the proportion of students in your class of just like any teacher charged with supporting a wide range of students and who is sitting in front of them in their classroom. These differences here can also maybe be helpful to district leaders in understanding how do we align that PL learning and continued on the job work to be able to say or on the job professional learning to say if this is what the demographics of your classroom look like, you might need a different type of support as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we also wanted to highlight that we wanted to account for the overlap between teachers with an ESL or bilingual credential and those who serve a moderate or large proportion of MLLs. So we also controlled for teachers' credentialing and the proportion of MLLs they serve and found the differences still statistically significant. And so I think it's telling that, teachers' needs are high in these groups, but
Yeah.
we need to continue to keep supporting them. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Another really interesting piece of this report. How do we, how prepared are teachers feeling, right? How does this, we've talked a little bit about how it varies across different demographics, but can you speak to what you looked at here and how this is different for principals versus teachers?
Yeah. So we were looking at sort of some reasons why, math teachers might not feel prepared to teach MLLs and saw that principals were not prioritizing, these sort of MLL supports for teachers. So we asked principals to rank their top 3 priorities for math professional development or math PD and gave them 10 different options here. You can see the top 3 choices of principals were to select math PD that is aligned to their math state standards, that helps teachers address the needs of students who struggled in master grade level math content, and that helps teachers plan instruction using their required or recommended math curriculum materials. And we see at least 60% of principals rank these as their top priorities.
And I don't think that was less surprising to me, is just acknowledging how much focus has been on the adoption of quality instructional materials, how that has rolled out at districts to then support in schools. But I do think the what this says about where we go from here. And so yes, that this is, I think, connects back to what you're saying on educators. If there's a different way that we think of, based on your experience as a teacher, if you have that credential, what does that look like? I would assume that that's part of why we see this low percentage in principals.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, when you look down this list, only 10% of principals ranked Math PD that helps address the needs of MLLs as one of their top priorities. And it's possible that principals may have competing priorities and find it difficult to prioritize PD that supports MLL learning. Yeah. And then we also asked principals to rank their priorities for selecting math teachers' instructional materials and gave them 14 different options here. So again, we see that providing options for MLLs ranked pretty low among principals' priorities this time for teachers' instructional materials. Only 9% of principals prioritize providing options for MLLs and math teachers' instructional materials. So instead, we see that materials that were aligned to their state's academic standards for math ranked the highest by far, which isn't surprising, while providing scaffolds to help students and engaging students followed as the second and third highest priorities. And again, echoing what we saw for principals' priorities before, it's possible that competing priorities might make it difficult for them to prioritize supports for MLLs.
Right. I think, and whoops, I go back for a second. I think that's important too, as we think about supporting district leaders in that kind of top-down approach of how we're supporting teachers within their classrooms, with principals and their role in ensuring teachers have what they need, and as in the instructional leaders of their building, it just becomes it continues to be critically important there as well. I think the other piece is, how teachers are selecting the work that they're doing. And even as you have adopted HQIM, you've been trained on it, you're pedagogically sound. That there are still decisions that teachers make every day in supporting their individual students. Can you share a little bit more about what we're seeing in this chart?
Yeah. So returning to teachers, we asked math teachers to rank their top 5 priorities when selecting tasks or activities from their instructional materials. And to clarify, this is like asked to all the math teachers, those who are using HQIM and those who aren't, and gave them 14 different options. Providing options for MLLs ranked near the bottom. Only 16% of math teachers ranked it as one of their top priorities. And this is even lower than the ranking of ELA and science teachers, where about 20% of ELA and science teachers ranked it as a top priority.
Right. This is one that I'm excited for the panel to interrogate a little bit too, right? Because I do think there are some districts, especially those that have a higher share of multilingual learners, that might be embedded in ways already. I think, in our work with some of the districts, that they are thinking about this as they roll out their instructional materials. And so if it's not that it then is less onus on the teacher to select into those. At the same time, we need more information too. And I know we could talk about this for at least another hour as well. And I want to get to the panel reflections. So as we jump over a little bit, Sabrina, is there anything else that you want to make sure that we cover, and in terms of summarizing from the report before I hand it over to Dr. Bryant?
Yeah, I think that one of the bright spots is that we find that teachers with an ASL or bilingual credential and teachers who serve, a moderate or large proportion tend to report, prioritizing options for MLLs more, and also tend to have more positive perceptions of their materials when teaching MLLs. And so I think if we think about, how to increase access to, materials that are very supportive in teaching MLLs and increase access to professional learning that supports teachers in that regard, I think we have different ways that we can tackle this.
Absolutely. And we know that there are some ways that are working too, which is the perfect segue to hand it back uh, to Dia to talk about our panelists. Thank you so much, Sabrina. I'm sure we'll also get some questions in the chat. And so at the end, we'll come back. So Sabrina's not going anywhere, don't worry. But thank you for giving us the data overview. And without further ado, Dr. Dia Bryant.
Thanks, Hill. Thank you, Sabrina. That was so informative, and incredibly important. And so now I am excited to have with me folks who are doing this work every single day in their real life. And so we have Dr. Shelley Jones, who's with us from Central Connecticut University. We have Lydia Acosta Stevens, who's with us from LAUSD. She is the executive director of multicultural education. We are fortunate to also have Dr. Francis Bias, who is the CAO, Chief Academic Officer in LAUSD, and Nalzi Perez, who is the Senior Executive Director for Curriculum and Instruction in Houston ISD. Thank you all for being with us. It is always such a pleasure to be amongst just brilliant women. And I am incredibly privileged to have you. And I think our participants are up for a treat. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Maybe as you sort of answer these questions, share with us a little bit about exactly what you do and how this pertains to you. But those results were incredibly compelling. A lot to learn about teachers' experiences, about how the work we do connects to what they're doing every day. Let's start with Shelley. What did you find most compelling about the study? What's sort of on top for you, the thing like you're like, I want to dig in more here? Let us know.
All right. Well, first of all, I work with pre-service teachers. I'm a teacher educator, specifically for math education. But I want to start with principles. It was concerning as well as compelling, right? Because when we think about principles, and only 10% of the principles ranked professional development to address the needs of multilingual learners, MLLs, that was a little concerning for me. But it's also an opportunity, right? We always have opportunities. I think one of the things that I like about the survey is that it separated out students that are struggling with MLLs. Because I think if we ask principals about students that are struggling, of course, we want to address the needs of students that are struggling, right? And many times they will lump MLLs into that group because many times MLLs might be struggling, and that's why we're here today. But I think that there's a need to pull out, and that's exactly what the survey did, was they pulled out the MLLs to say, listen, we need to make sure that we address the needs of these students as well. And the good news is a lot of the work that's being done with students that are struggling, specifically in math, will also benefit MLLs. And that's what we need to pull out, but we need to be intentional about it. And so I think that's where the work that I would love to sink my teeth into more. This report is really a great opportunity for us.
Listen, as you were talking, folks were writing and shaking their heads. So I already know that the other women on the call have thoughts. Let's go, Nalzi, Francis, and then Lydia.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I echo what Dr. Jones said. I it makes me really think truly about what we have planned this year and the fact that it's, less than a month into our year, and I need to evaluate clearly that I'm aligned to the actual needs that are being shared here by our teachers and what they are saying, but also the misconception that it's not critically important for us to know exactly how to support our multilingual students. I'm thinking about our curriculum writers and the supports and scaffolds, as well as resources that are being provided, and whether I have a tight enough alignment to what is being put in front of them and how that's directly connected to the professional development and focuses that I have. A big effort that we made this year is not teaching multilingual strategies in isolation for any of our content areas. So that is like the biggest push that we're doing, because yeah, we just saw a huge gap when that is not happening. So I was glad to see that there is an emphasis on like sticking to this, like teaching the standards, being on grade level. Now it's just about making sure that is really tightly aligned to those areas that I mentioned.
I think that's right. Dr. Baez, what are your thoughts here?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you all just a reflection on this research and also the application in our district. So something that I found that was surprising was just that the rate of the rate the teachers felt comfortable in engaging the multilingual learners in instruction. That was surprising because there's been so much professional development. And I know in the credentialing programs, there's a course on engaging students with our multilingual learners, yet it's not enough. And the professional development needs to continue. And Lydia Costa Stevens and her team and others have done a great job of integrating with the core curriculum, so that what we're teaching, we are embedding the content as well as the pedagogy and the strategies to engage our students in the learning. It's so important to help our teachers all the time because of the turnover. Given the turnover in our classrooms is the reason why we're seeing this report, because we're all working on it. I've been doing this for, actually today marks the 30th year. 30 years ago, I stepped into a classroom today. That's my anniversary. So and because I've been doing this work for so long, we know that there's been a lot of professional development, engaging our multilingual learners, pedagogy, culturally relevant and sustaining pedagogy, just a lot of professional development. And so I really believe that at the root of this is the turnover. Given the turnover that we have in the classrooms, that historical knowledge is lost. And so teachers feel that they don't have the tools. And so what's important is to continue providing professional development, not in isolation, but incorporating it into the curriculum, and for curriculum developers to have a very prominent section in their curriculum that calls out the supports and the strategies and the choices that you can offer students during the learning, and what activities to do during small group instruction. Many times we see that these components are hidden, or they're another book, or they're another, many clicks away to getting to
In the
the actual,
appendix.
in the appendix, but it should be prominent.
That's
And it
right.
should not just be like a little section. It should be like within the curriculum. So I feel like there's opportunity. I see what's at the root of this. Potentially have a hypothesis of what it could be, but I also feel there's an opportunity to just say we need to continue doing this work.
I really appreciate what you shared, Dr. Baez, about the turnover, particularly in large urban districts like the ones you represent. It happens. And I imagine that Lydia sees quite a bit of the impact of that in her work. Sort of how that shows up in classrooms, what that looks and feels like. Lydia, I would love to hear you sort of talk about that, but also sort of share like what was compelling for you in this report.
I think the compelling piece for me was actually every single piece of it, only because it's first, thank you for doing this research and the overall connections in terms of the educator and the leadership space. I'm now thinking about those interviews I want to have with MLL students in secondary courses and what they're feeling. So as I look at all those spaces, going back to what Frances shared, and we're fortunate in LAUSD. My respect for Frances personally, love her, and professionally. And I think it begins there at a district. If you don't have that kind of level of respect and trust to dialogue and have these hard conversations at the highest level, how can one expect for that to happen with principals and educators in grade levels and departments, in math and science content, to feel safe enough to say, I don't know what to do and I'm struggling? Starts there. Then what we're fortunate to have in LA is that we do create those spaces with our instructional leadership teams. And the focus is there. It must start with those teams, all the leaders, teachers are leaders in those spaces. And I would even say, including instructional aides and all of these itinerant supports, digging in. Once you dig in, then you look at the curriculum. We are very fortunate to have a curriculum that was created, and there's no perfect curriculum, that one of them that we use with MLLs in mind, around academic language, academic discourse, accountable talk, back in the day when I was growing up, right? Those pieces, I do wonder at the institutes of higher learning if that's what they're doing. And how do you practically do that with the variety of courses and levels for multilingual learners? And how are you leveraging their one linguistic brain? It's not two separate languages, it's one. And intersectional spaces that our kiddos live in gender. Think of Shiraki Hawley, culturally and linguistically responsive pedagogy in those spaces. I'm again fortunate we're doing it in our district. I have coaches who are part of those teams at our region levels. Our content people connect with my language people, although they're one and the same, right? In so many spaces when they plan. And through Frances's team and her leadership and the exceptional rollout of curriculum, that curriculum isn't the complete answer. It's the teacher planning time for the dialogue. You got to know what the curriculum has. You can't, our educators and all of us can't say, we can't say, I'm not reading the research. This is what I think. Read the research, know the curriculum, where are the gaps, and your children change every year.
Yeah. What
Again,
I'm also hearing from
fortunate
you,
here.
what I'm also hearing, I think, from you as well as from Dr. Baez is quality pedagogy, right? And how do we ensure that that's happening? And I think each of you are coming at that from different angles when I think about each of your work. Nalzi, would love to hear, like, from you right away, like, how does Houston ISD think about that? And then Dr. Baez and Dr. Jones, if you could talk, Dr. Baez, you talk about maybe LAUSD, and then Dr. Jones, I'd love to hear about how do you ensure that in pre-service, right? So this is sort of a mechanism that you kind of only get once you get in the classroom. It's I don't know, I was a math teacher, that's how it was for me. But Nalzi, would love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Dia. Yes, so we realized every year that the plan that we put together works, and that it's never done. So every year we've been comprehensively looking at the gaps, looking at, is our programming the right programming? Like, are we focused, or leaving students behind because of a system issue rather than, looking at like individual students and seeing how they're progressing through both biliteracy and building English proficiency. We are a huge dual language district in our early grades, and we have several dual language secondary campuses as well. But the biggest gap that we've realized recently, and that is at the forefront of our strategy, is our newcomers. Our newcomer students, and then applying the strategies that we have that we know work to build biliteracy and continue that to our newcomer students in secondary, where I truly believe, or going back to what Lydia was sharing, that our secondary students and secondary teachers are the ones that need the most support, because we are not targeting the decodable skills that also help them and what they need to be able to do in mathematics and all the content areas. And a lot of our teachers at those grade levels don't receive professional development to go to the level that our newcomer students require, right? So we do have a huge emphasis on grade level, and the comprehensive view this year has been not just professional development, which I know is a huge topic for us today for teachers, but really the leader aspect. HISD strongly believes that our campus leaders are the teacher's #1 coach. So as such, all professional development that we know or believe that is part of our plan for teachers, we have to scale up to the campus leader, scale up again to the district leader, and even align with our superintendent to make sure that it's one message. The multilingual learner has been a hot topic for many years. This year, even more so. And it's really about, regardless of all the noise, making sure that we're doing the right thing and that we are all aligned to the strategies that we want to put forth with them. And that will, of course, include curriculum, resources, and really narrowing our focus to look at a few things, make sure we're doing those really well, and then moving out. We tried the opposite approach. All of these are great, and then we weren't able to implement them like with fidelity.
That's great. Dr. Bias, your thoughts?
So I think that the way that we've been approaching this is real world application. Real world application really transcends language. When we provide students with a real world scenario and bring in these math concepts and encourage the use of academic language for the discourse, for students to raise a claim, to cite evidence, to justify their claim, to go through the productive struggle, all of those are key skills that students need, not just in math, but also in language arts and science and in life. And so we really try to promote that heavily, and really promoting the importance of the high rigorous questioning skills, so that teachers are really looking at the time spent solving a challenging problem of depth of knowledge question number 4, and really ensuring that students have an opportunity to respond to questions of that nature. But you're giving them the front loading with the academic language, small group instruction, and preparing them, front loading our multilingual learners to participate in the whole group, so that students had an opportunity to see it multiple times before they're engaging in the learning in math. So that's become really critical, is the academic discourse, the language piece to the problem solving, and real world application, because real world application is at the highest level of DOK. And that's where we want to take all of our students, and really doing more of the problem-based learning and less of the procedural, which tends to happen to everybody, but it's even more critical for our multilingual learners. So as a result of that, just recently in our preliminary Smarter Balance assessment, we saw an increase of 10.4 percentage points for our multilingual learners, and those that reclassified, an increase of 13.92. So we're really seeing that the strategies are helping and supporting our students.
I mean, that's incredible. And I think summing up what you shared is like, there's cognitive demand, there's cognitive engagement. It's not just, sort of going through the motions of algorithms and doing a thing. There's some energy being spent on behalf of children to actually sort of ascertain the learning and the knowledge and the information. Love that. And congratulations on those gains. I mean, that is incredibly inspiring. Dr. Jones, what does this look like in pre-service? How do we do this?
I'm so inspired. I like have so much I want to say. I'm going to start first with Catherine Cheval, one of my colleagues that I've worked with in the past, and her colleagues. They provide recommendations for strategies that effectively develop math content knowledge and English language simultaneously. So one is positioning students as leaders in the classroom. So when I have pre-service teachers, I need to help them understand, how do you do that? How do you do it? One way is you press students. You walk around and you find out what students know. And even when they don't want to answer because they're really not sure about how to say it, right? You've already talked to them and you've already told them, this is brilliant. I'm going to call on you. And then when you call on them and they kind of shrink down, you don't say, oh no, I'm not going to, okay, you're off the hook. No, you're not off the hook. We're gonna work our way through this, right? So that was one of the things that she talked about. But one of the other things that I'm passionate about is engaging them through culturally relevant context. And I have something, me and my colleagues have something called the culturally relevant, cognitively demanding math task framework, because to be an emerging task, you have to start with a cognitively demanding task. And all that means is students have to be able to think about it in more than one way. And it's open, it's usually multi-step, but it can be done. And then we bring in and integrate community funds of knowledge. So at the pre-service level, what I have students do is my students have to do either a student interview or a community walk. And I was like, you got to get out the car and walk. You got to go to the school and you got to find out what's in their community. And then you create a lesson plan based on that. Or you do an interview with one of the students that are in your field site, and you interview them and you find out, what do they like? What do they think about math, right? And you use that information to create a lesson from a positive, from an asset-based, strength-based way. So all of these things help pre-service teachers. They always say, I never thought we could do all of this. Like, I thought it was just math and you just do a worksheet. No, we're going to do real world things. Last but not least, Chevelle and her colleagues, they put forth a family survey. And so, yes, and if you look on their on the website, it's published by Corin, but it's a family survey, and you get to learn about the families in your community. And I know you guys are already doing that, but these are really targeted questions, and you use that to as a foundation for your lesson. Think about it like this. I wrote this down. Tools like that survey highlight how drawing on students' cultural and community knowledge can be leveraged to make math instruction more meaningful and effective. And so that's what I do in my professional development, and with my pre-service teachers. Appreciate that.
Powerful. I think Lydia, you want to share something?
First, I want all your teachers to come to LAUSD. So just a shout out. We're an awesome district, and also to Houston, Texas. I would love to have some kind of partnership with you. When I hear all of this, I love that you're touching on the cognitive justice family piece. There are unfortunately underlying assumptions, even as I was growing up in our own communities, about what our kids can and can't do. And if you don't tackle them by going into the community and finding the brilliance, the giftedness, everyone has it, and it looks different for everyone. So I appreciate that. The other space I'll talk about that Frances touched on, and she leads this in such an eloquent and powerful way, is that real world application piece. Because the real world application piece, depending on where you live in the world, is in a lot of different spaces, including the work that you do and you choose to engage in. So she's leading in that in such a beautiful way. So our focus in our department has always been build the tools to create the conversations, and we have them in our department, for the planning and the cognitive justice that the teachers have to engage in. We are not telling people page by page. We are telling you, know every page, know its strengths, fill the holes based on the students that you know, and those alignments. And that's where I land with that. And I do believe LA has that with many secondary teachers. And then to address that key question that's being asked when someone says, but I teach English all day long, they're getting it. Even when students reclassify and are no longer emerging bilinguals, they're now considered English proficient. It doesn't stop. You're not teaching English all day long. You are teaching content knowledge and noticing language distinctions, strengths, and leveraging them for standard English learners as well. So we're not asking any student to let go of that because it works in our communities and in different spaces. And teachers, how do you put that together? So our teachers need that opportunity to plan cognitively justice oriented task, as you have mentioned, Shelley. And I have a great partner to do that with.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. So we talked quite a bit about the teachers, right? But one of the most compelling pieces of this study is the conversation around principals. Um, I, former principal, it's not an easy job. And what we learned from this survey is quite a few principals rank MLL service or MLL teaching low on their list of priorities. Talk a little bit about how you are sort of lifting those boats for leadership. How are you supporting the leaders to go head in and prioritize this work and actually inspire their teachers to embrace it too? Particularly, Lydia, I think you named something that often happens in classrooms, which is we know there's a language barrier, so we assume there's a cognitive
Yeah.
issue. And that happens so often with Ls and MLLs. Would love to start with Dr. Baez, then Nalzi, and then Dr. Jones or Lydia, if you'd like to join in.
Okay, so with respect to the way we support our leaders, we implement the teaching and learning framework. The origins are Charlotte Danielson, and the teaching and learning framework consists of looking at teacher planning, discussion, collaboration with family and community, and many other aspects of it. We support our principals in honing in their lens, in observing a lesson and providing feedback. And throughout the year, we have an emphasis on one of the elements. So one of the elements is standards-based instruction. The other one is use of academic discourse, being able to provide intentional instructional grouping in the classroom. We provide the principals with look-fors. So when they're going into the classroom, they know what to look for. And during professional development for teachers, we provide the teachers the same look-fors. So that teachers set up their classrooms, their resources, and their lessons in ways that they will expect principals to look at when they visit their classrooms. In addition to that, we provide the principals with an overview and professional development on the curriculum, an overview so they know what to look for, maybe not to the degree that teachers know it, but for the principals to know it and have a common conversation about the use. And of course, always looking at data. We use the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycles, the improvement cycles for schools to create their SMART goals and look at the groups that are needing more support. And of course, many times it's our multilingual learners. And so then that leads to the strategies that needs to be used and reinforced. We come back and look at data again to see if what we implemented worked or not, and then we do it again. But that's the cycle. And so we have that system established in our district to be able to help our principals really hone in their skills in that area.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, and I promise I'm not. I'm going to try to just highlight the similarities and then focus on maybe just the nuances from Dr. Baez. Thank you so much for setting me up for a great bat. Thank you so much. So I think the number one piece is I mentioned earlier that we narrowed down our focus based on trying to apply a lot of different strategies, like things that we know work in instruction to our students and narrowing those down. So we really focused on things that have already been said, which is the peer conversation, chunking things out, like supporting them on like how to do it, not always doing it for them, because then if we don't do it or we stop doing it, then it just stops being done kind of conversation. A huge emphasis this year in training on cross-linguistic supports, especially as I continue the conversation with our newcomers. We do pull all of our cognates, vocabulary, and TPR for every single one of our lessons in reading and math, and provide that to leaders and then development. But that is a resource that had been requested for a while, and that unless they're doing their own research or have just that base, which a lot of our teachers don't, based on our data report, then they wouldn't be able to successfully do it at all times. And then the other pieces that were mentioned is, again, aligning we always have time with principals and even principal appraisers to make sure that we are aligning on the look-fors, what we call the appraisal specialty guides, which is, yes, we have fundamentally, this is what every good classroom instruction engagement planning, like all domains should look like. When you walk into a dual language classroom, or when you walk into an ESL classroom or a transitional bilingual classroom, this is what it looks like when a teacher is supporting those students, and they for doing this, not penalized because their pacing might be a little bit off, or et cetera. So we provide the guidance, calibrate, look at the report. We have a very small team that goes out and we do audits with our school supervisors and principal leaders, and then report out and repeat the cycle. So essentially, it's just like focus, calibration, and then professional development, data, repeat.
That's incredible. I guess for Shelley, sort of, you've heard sort of how that looks in application and in practice. As you work with pre-service teachers, I mean, in what ways do you help them advocate for the types of supports, the types of suggestions, the types of resources that I think Dr. Baez and Nalzi just sort of laid out for us?
Sure. I'll touch on that briefly, but I do want to talk about the principals. I think with the pre-service teachers, sort of exposing them to all the things that we're talking about, to these different tools that are being used in the districts. They need to know about these tools before they get there. They need to understand what is a lesson plan. We explore, we do the math, we summarize. How do we do those things, right? How do I even create a lesson? From the principal standpoint, I think what we need to do is help them make the connections to the priorities they already have, right? So some of their priorities include things like making sure it's aligned with the standards, making sure it's grade level content, and helping struggling students. Well, if we can help them and say, well, listen, we have content standards in math, but we also have the standards for math practice. What does that mean? How can I help students persevere in order to solve the problem? That's mathematics, that's the standards. So we have to show them how to use the content standards, but how we use the practice standards to get to the content. So then when we're helping them with that, when we're helping students be able to communicate using mathematics, then we're going to have something specific about MLLs. So if we can connect all of these things we're talking about to the standards that's already there and help them to see where they fit, then that might help principals. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say about principals. One more thing.
Yeah, keep going.
Sometimes when we want to see results in districts, sometimes we gotta, I say, go to the back door. We gotta go through the back door. We always think we have to start with the standards. Well, my colleague Lou Matthews, he came up with something called Will. When we introduced this,
Can you say it again, Shelley? You went
hope,
out when you said it.
like hope, keep hope alive, HOPE.
Oh,
and it was during the pandemic. And he recognized that what we were going through in the pandemic, we needed a different way of doing math during the pandemic, but we need to continue this way. Okay, so let me tell you about the HOPE verbs. The HOPE verbs are love, protest, restore, invest, inspire, create. Why would we use those words in math? So that's what we want to tell you. Sometimes you have to set the intention for the lesson. So if we have all these and we can write the plan, but how did we start it? Like what intention? And if the only intention is to pass a test, right? Or to raise a score, sometimes that's not going to do it. So we have to start like with the heart. That's Zabala and Aguirre. They have a book that says something with the heart, right? Wait. Cultivating Mathematical Hearts. We got to start there. So that's what I think we also have to convince principals of is, yes, it's about the math content, but it's about those habits of mind. How do you get there? But it's also about the heart. And y'all know that because I've seen your work. So if we can convince principals of that, then I think we can just show them that there's more than one way. We're still going to use those tools, but we're going to set the intention as love first. I had a student that they took photos, middle school students. I said, take photos of things that have math in it. And he came back and it was a garden that his grandfather had, and it was very neat. And when he told the story about his grandfather's garden, you could see the love. And so what did we do? We said, okay, we could use arrays. We could talk about how many rows there are and how many plants. And he talked about how he helped his grandfather in his garden. Those are the real world applications, Francis, that we want, but that comes from the heart. And so that's where we got to start sometimes. We got to go through the back door.
May I add to that? Because
You absolutely can. I mean, Dr. Jones just gave us a master class in in math SEL. I mean, that was fantastic.
thank you for your brilliance. I literally, in a saying we have here about the work, we don't say hard work, we say heart work in everything we do instructionally. And going back to your point in terms of the culture coming into the classroom and not beginning always with the standard and the backwards planning space. Thank you so much, because our kids are not a monolithic group, especially MLLs, emerging bilinguals, all of those spaces. And once again, even once they no longer have that label, these supports, I don't want to call them supports, these opportunities need to exist so that they can be the problem solvers and contributors to society, the good of society, of everything that we do not know that they will face 10, 20 years from now. They are succession planning. It's the kids who will take these spots and hopefully respect their elders. So thank you again. It starts there. We do have to maintain the must-dos, may-dos. In our department, one of our must-dos is in everything you engage in with cognitive justice discussions of rigor, there must be a minimum of 4 exchanges. Not yes, no exchanges, not here's the answer, to prove and justify your thinking. No wrong and right, prove and justify your thinking in math and science. And
Listen,
for social studies.
Sorry, Lydia, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We got 3 minutes left. I have no idea how an hour goes by in these things. And so I'm grateful to Hillary that we will do a part 2 on this to think about. I began as a first-year teacher over 20-something years ago. And I walked into this school in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, where I was the only person who spoke English. All of my students were 100% MLLs. They had just arrived, new arrivals, like literally brand new. And as a first-year teacher teaching math and algebra, I found myself in quite the challenge. And I'm wondering what sort of one thought you'd offer that new teacher who's landing in a classroom this fall and looking at the students and thinking, I don't know what I'm doing and I have to help you. Give us some thoughts. Let's go Nalzi, Dr. Baez, Dr. Jones, and then Lydia.
I think I heard my name first, so I'm gonna
Did.
jump in.
And we've only got 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start again by thanking everyone. I came to this really, really excited and I was not disappointed. And thank you to the panel for just everything that you shared. Being in a highly, in a large urban district and being a representative of this amazing community is just really a blessing and something to be truly grateful for. I actually, whether we have a second part or not, Dia, I'm gonna connect with my fellow panelists so we can continue the conversation because I want to not only continue aligning on these ML access points that we're providing, but also see what our data is telling us specifically, and where I know that wasn't 100% of the conversation, but the gaps that we continue to see, especially in like my district. I want to have a clear focus on what we might not be considering and how we can make things even better.
I think that's right.
I'll pass it on.
Yeah. That first year teacher, Dr.
First
Baez, what
year
are you telling
teacher.
them?
First year teacher is teach with love and also talk with your mentor daily.
Mm,
That's it.
powerful.
Then after Dr. Jones.
I would say, yeah, all of the above. Also talk to your students. Like really learn from them and from the community as much as you can. Like immerse yourself in the community a little bit so they get to know you. Maybe they see you at the grocery store, even if you don't live there, just do stuff. And
Ah,
they will be so helpful. The parents will be so helpful when you just engage with them.
Lydia, final
I
word?
would say connect with a teacher, an educator who inspires you, past, present, future.
Hmm.
Find the student who inspires you and gives you the fight. And lastly, know that it is absolutely okay to say to students and families and everyone, I don't know, but I'm going to try and I'll lead with heart. That's it. I mean, that's just the humanity. That's it.
Super powerful. Clearly, we have been so fortunate to have the goats on this call.
Too
You
true.
all knocked
Yes,
it out
and
the
yeah,
park.
I agree. We'll absolutely do a part two. We shared a bunch of resources in the chat. We've got websites and emails and QR codes. But yes, thank you all so much. And thank you to everybody that joined today with a robust discussion, and I think from every corner of the country. But Dia, in our -1 minutes, can you just close us out?
I mean, have a great day. Download the report, share the report, learn as much as you can, and send good questions to RAND so that we can get more research that actually really helps our practice. Thank y'all and have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.